Thank you very much for joining us today. So my name is Valentine van den Bogaert, and I'm a geospatial data project manager here at Blue Square. And today I will be the moderator of the session. So I will start with a small general introduction on Blue Square, and then I will introduce the three speakers of today. So Blue Square, we are a global health data and technology company. We're based in Brussels. We have different domains of expertise: health information systems, digitalization of activities, data collection, integration and visualization, geographic information systems, data science and modeling, and capacity building. So we developed different tools. So there is the GIS2 suite. So Blue Square developed a collection of GIS2 apps aiming to provide a better experience to the users by extending the tool's core capabilities. So GIS2 is a health information management system that is developed through global collaboration led by the University of Oslo. Then OpenIMS, which is an insurance management information system that provides schemes and insurance plans for the reimbursement of healthcare providers. IASO, which is a geospatial data management platform or a georegistry developed by Blue Square as well, and it's to support the continuous management of geographic information. And then there is OpenHexa, which is a data integration and analysis platform as well developed by Blue Square. So all those tools are open source. We don't sell the tools and are tool agnostic. So we'll work with the tool of choice, chosen by the client. You can see that we mainly work in Africa, but not only. And on the slide, you will see the different clients with whom we worked previously as well. Then, we organize a series of webinars called Data in Practice. And in those webinars, we present approaches and tools for the implementation of geospatial information systems and optimization of data. All the webinars are visible on our YouTube channel, and well, you will be able. You can just find it on YouTube by clicking on Blue Square. This webinar as well will be recorded and available at the end of the session on YouTube. So the three speakers of today are Moritz Lennart. So Moritz, he's a director of the Geospatial Data and Health Campaign Digitization team at Blue Square. He has 20 plus years of experience in applied and fundamental research and in teaching in the field of spatial information science and modeling. He has a PhD in geography. Then Gildas Bocco, he's a geospatial engineer. He's a specialist in geographic information systems, environment, remote sensing, has a PhD in geography and environmental management as well. And Claire Halleux, she's geospatial data project manager at Blue Square, is an expert in geographic information systems, has a master's degree in bioengineering and environmental science from the University of Louvain in Belgium. So now, before I give the word to Moritz, I would just like you to ask to send all your questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom rather than in the chat. But as I just heard, apparently the chat function is anyway not working. So during the call, during the webinar, we'll try to answer some questions, and at the end we'll come back to others. So now I will leave the floor to Moritz.
Thank you very much, Valentine. Hello to everyone. I'm going to give you a general overview of the topics we are discussing today during this webinar. And then I will give you a first technical point, and then the other two colleagues will present two other technical points. So why are we actually this interested in geospatial data and in healthy geospatial data? Well, in many countries, detailed governance of hierarchical systems used to be decentralized. Local health, school, or other officials, they know the location of their sites. Any distribution, training, etc. cascades down from one level to the next, which means that actually there's no need for centralized knowledge about geospatial locations. But there's been somewhat of a paradigm shift, if you want to, with several elements that push that shift. First of all, there's a desire for more centralized, geospatially detailed analysis of the system. More detailed monitoring, evaluation, surveillance, service availability analyses, accessibility, etc. Also, there are new centralized digital planning systems coming into place for both new investments, but also for campaigns, for example, health campaigns. There's also a movement in many countries of integration of domain-specific hierarchies, for example, the health hierarchy, into the general administrative hierarchy, meaning that these have to be aligned, and in order to align them, you have to have clean data. There's also new forms of spatially continuous data that have arrived, mostly based on satellite imagery, and these also require good geographic data to be able to use that continuous data in discrete entities. And there's more and more new geospatial modeling approaches in support to policy. All that leads to us having to think about data quality. Why is that? What kind of issues could I face if I use bad quality data? Well, first of all, you could find yourself with quite incoherent statistics if you have bad contours that are used to aggregate lower level or continuous data. As an example, on the left you can see an extract from the World Pop database, and you can see each of the little boxes represents a number of persons living there. And you can see the red lines that show the contours of two adjacent polygons. And actually the one at the top is the limit of the polygon on the bottom, and the red line at the bottom is the boundary of the polygon on the top. So as you can see, we have the space between these lines, which is non-determined in terms of its to which polygon it actually belongs to. And so you don't know how to calculate these statistics. There's also potential conflicts about territorial competencies. As I mentioned, we have this move towards decentralization, and so as you can see on the right, we have the example from Cameroon where you have a series of municipalities in colors, and you have a series of health areas of which you see the black boundaries. And you can see they are not aligned at all. But in Cameroon now, municipalities have competencies on health, and so there needs to be coherence between them. Obviously, if you don't have the right locations of people that need vaccines or health facilities that need new material, then you might actually send people to the wrong places. Here's another example. This is something we did in Niger to help the ministry estimate, say, the optimized location of new health facilities. And what you can see here is just an estimation of, let's say, the health coverage. So the percentage of population that lives within a certain range of any given health center. And as you can see from the numbers on the bottom, just by moving a health facility by 10 kilometers, which is not that much of a quality issue, at least, let's say we see that quite often as quality issue. So just by moving a health center by 10 kilometers, you can see that the health coverage drops from 31% to 20%. So you can see you get quite different results when you analyze your entire system just because of bad data quality. So in conclusion, errors in geospatial data can lead to significant errors in results. Also, wrong or unclean geospatial data can be difficult to use for some types of analyses and might reduce the credibility of official sources that provide such unclean data. So there's definitely a need to identify and to correct errors in geospatial data. So in this webinar, we were looking at different types of errors, different types of data. So we're going to look at point data, single layers or single theme polygon data, and multiple layer polygon data. We'll look at in different forms for each of these. We'll look at how to identify errors, but also how to correct errors. The tool we use here in this webinar is QGIS, which is a free software GIS, which you can just download from the address there. And just important to note, we're only showing you a selection of problems and of solutions in order to inspire you to go further and explore yourself. So if I take immediately to the first point, which is about point data, what types of errors do we observe in our daily work with point data? Well, sometimes you just have coordinates which are just completely wrong. So this is important to identify and to then correct. Sometimes you also have just coordinates which are truncated in the sense that, for example, you only get 2 decimal places, not more. And so when you look at the 2 maps of Benin, the schools of Benin at the bottom in the center, you will see the impact of such truncation. So on the right you see the same schools as on the left, but with only 2 decimal places, and you see this weird alignment of points. So you already notice that you're not as precise in terms of location. Sometimes you just have a wrong sign when you go beyond on the other side of the equator, on the other side of the meridian of Greenwich. You sometimes need to have negative or positive coordinates, and so if those signs are not correctly placed, you get errors as well. You can have latitude-longitude inversion. So on the right you see an example of that. So in one region here, the coordinates of latitude-longitudes have been inverted, and so suddenly this data is completely elsewhere on the map. You can also have issues with formats with mix of decimal and degree, minute, second coordinate formats. All these can create issues. Here's another example of the type of issue you might encounter. So this shows you the incoherence between the location of points and their official administrative affiliation. So what you can see here, all the points in yellow fall into a district which is different to the district that they are supposed to be part of. These are all locations. So you can see all these ones in yellow where it says Bagno, they are supposed to be in Bagno, which is further to the east, but they're actually in the district of Banking. The problem here obviously is that just from looking at the map and from this analysis, at this point we don't know whether the problem is a wrong point location or potentially wrong boundaries of these districts. So what can we do about that? Well, as always, I would say, first of all, try to avoid errors at the source. So when you do data collection, use a tool that imposes an existing hierarchy in the data collection tool. That means when someone wants to add data, they have to navigate through a pyramid and through a hierarchy and have to position correctly the data in that hierarchy. As you can see, our tool that we developed, Yazo, does that in its mobile application. Obviously, register all coordinates with sufficient precision. You need a minimum sank decimal places in order to get meter level precision. And control. Use controls directly during the entry of the data. Any modern data collection tool allows you to do that. Here you have an example from ODK, which is the base of the form definitions that we use in our Yazo tool as well. And you can see how just the latitude longitude coordinates are controlled just by the bounding box of here it's the case of Cameroon, so they have to be between a certain longitude and west and east, and a certain latitude south and north, in order to be accepted. What we're going to look at now in practice is how to actually do what I showed before, the test of seeing if points are actually located in the administrative areas they are supposed to belong to. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take points and we're going to load into the data of these points the information of the polygon they fall into, and then we can compare the name or ID of that polygon with the name or ID of the entity they are supposed to be part of. Then if we see errors, if the two are not identical, then we have to search for the source of error, obviously. An important part here is we need to be able to trust the polygons if we want to actually use that technique to change the data affiliate to the points. But we're not going to go into that. So let me just show you the example here. So you have two data sets. You have the districts of Cameroon, the health districts, and if you look into the attribute table of that data, you can see that we have a name of a district and we have a reference, an ID, unique ID of that district. And then we have the localities in Cameroon, and if you look at the attribute table of those localities, you can then again see that we have a administrative district name, so this is the district the locality is supposed to be part of, and the same district's ID. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a tool in QGIS which is called join attributes by location to get the attributes from the polygon layer into the point layer. So we start with the point layer, we then use the polygon layer. We have to use some form of interaction between the two here. We can just use intersection, but sometimes we might need to use a different one. And then we can decide which fields from the polygon layer we want to see in the attribute table of the point layer. So here we're going to just use name and the ID. And we can give that a prefix to those columns in order to find them easily in the attribute table of the points. So that is already done. And so when you now look at the result, you can actually see that we have in the attribute table the district name and the district ID coming from the polygon layer. So corresponding to the polygon, the point falls into. And so as soon as you look at that district name and ID and compare it to the one which is actually the administrative district ID they're supposed to be falling, you can see that some of them work and correspond to, are the same, but some are not. And so now the question obviously how to get an overall picture of all that. Here you see the names are different, so you can see it's not the same. So what we're going to do now is do a query on the data, select all those localities where the ID of the administrative area they're supposed to fall in is unequal to the ID of the one they actually do fall into geographically. So here you see we have all these features selected, and you see out of the 9,000 and something localities here, 2,000 and something are in that situation, so data is not of very good quality. And you can see here all these points selected. What you can do now is to save only those selected points, and then you have a new layer which you can work with, which is all the localities which are not in the correct boundaries. You can send those to someone else and to do some checking or whatever. So this concludes this example here about how these points can be tested. But obviously, as I said, this also depends on the quality of our data concerning boundaries. And so the next part now that we are going to move into is the topological correction within one polygon layer.
Hello. So yes, thank you, Moritz. Regarding polygon layers, we are going to look at frequent errors. So between administrative or else entities polygons, we are usually expecting a continuous coverage over a territory. And so we'll be looking here at gaps, overlaps, and invalid geometries. And so this picture is about a combination of sources of else area limits, but we are going to look at this in more details in the demo. Next slide, please. So in order to start, well, assume that all your layers and the project that you are using in QGIS are in the same projected coordinate system. We'll be performing a topology check on the layer of concern to verify that this layer does not have overlaps, that there are no holes, that there are no invalid geometries, which will all have implications on the analysis and the processing that could be done based on this layer, as Moritz has just explained. And there's an easy tool in QGIS that allows to repair automatically invalid geometries if any are found. And then we'll look into a bit more details how we can delete or treat some of the overlapping areas that we can find and how we can fill the gaps and assign them to neighboring entities. Next. So in order to realize the necessary corrections in QGIS, you'll need to activate the view of the processing toolbox panel. That's what we are going to mainly use in this demo. And then there are also toolbars that are very useful when you do any kind of manual editing. This is mostly the digitizing, advanced digitizing, and snapping toolbars. Thanks. So in this demo, we are going to start from a use case where we have two data layers of else areas polygons, and we want to clean up the resulting merge of these two layers. And so we see here in green the priority source layer, to which we've just received a secondary, the green one is the secondary layer, and we've received a second layer, and we merged them together to have this blue layer. And we are going to check this layer and through the topology checker. In this, we'll set up some rules that needs to be checked by the software. So the layer must not overlap, it must not have gaps, and it must not have any invalid geometries. So once those three rules are set up, we click OK, and we are going to execute the topology check. And so here in the bottom right panel, we can see the list of all the errors that have been identified. So there are a number of gaps, and then there are also a list of overlaps. So in total, there are 325 errors that have been found in this data set. So we can visualize and hide them. And now another way to visualize these errors is also to simply modify the opacity of the data layer, which with the transparency will allow us to visualize some of the most significant overlaps or gaps. And so we can see here a number of them that are, some are simply done from, excuse me. So these gaps are now going to be checked. So we can see here that some of them are simply coming from differences in digitizing hydrography. And we'll now look back at our two initial source layers and see that some of the overlaps are actually coming from differences between these two layers. Since we have one layer which has a priority level compared to the other one, we'll use the difference tool in order to cut out from the secondary layer the areas that are part of the priority layer. So that's what we've just done. And we see in darker green this layer that is resulting. So now we'll use this multi-part to single-part polygons in order to be able to select the feature parts separately. And so we'll see here smaller polygons that have resulted from our previous steps. So these areas close to the rivers are actually the results from the difference tool that we used right before. And so we are going to select these polygons in order to merge them with their neighbor. And to do so, we'll have to calculate their area. And so we'll use the field calculator and create a new field called area, which is a real number. And we'll use here the area option. We can then sort them by size, and we'll see that. So here, since we have a projected like a UTM coordinate system, we have areas that are calculated in square meters. So some of them are very small. So now we are going to check in our merged layer what was the size of the smallest else area. And so we'll do the same exercise in this layer. So we'll open the field calculator. We'll create a new field called area, and we'll then calculate automatically the area of each of these polygons. If we sort them, then we can see that the smallest else area in this layer is actually 21 million square meters. So it's 21 square kilometers. And we'll use this as a threshold. So we can see here in yellow the smallest else area selected. So now we go back to our initial layer, the one that we were cleaning, and we'll use the selection by expression. We'll select all polygons that are smaller than 20 square kilometers. So it's area inferior to 20 millions. We select the features. We can see them selected in blue. Here they are going to appear in yellow when they are selected. And so we see that these small polygons along the river are now appearing in yellow. And we are now going to merge them with their neighbors. And so we'll use the tool called Eliminate Selected Polygons. And we can choose if we want to merge them with their biggest neighbor or with the ones with the longest common boundary or the smallest neighbor. So there are different options. Depending on the context, you'll use one instead of another one. And so we can see now that those small polygons have been dissolved with their neighbors, while the other polygons have stayed untouched. So now we are going to merge back again our priority layer with the secondary source that we have started cleaning. And so we use this merge vector layers tool. We select these two layers and we run it. And so we now have again a layer with these two sources. And we'll now be willing to address the gaps. So we see some of the gaps that are visually significant. And so here, for instance, we can see a river crossing one of the holes, and we'll consider that the river southeast of this river will need to be merged with the else area, which is at the bottom. And so we'll use here the editing tools and making sure that the snapping and avoid overlaps in the active layers options are selected. And we can then start to draw the area that is currently missing in our polygon. We can then overlap the neighboring areas, because since our avoid overlap option is selected, it will be automatically cut. And so now this new polygon is just matching its neighbors and will be able to then either give it a name or merge it with its neighbor. So in this case, we'll merge it with the bottom polygon. And we can here switch the attributes and use the ones from the largest area, for instance. And so this is done. And we can then proceed similarly if we want to cover other of the gaps. And we now save our changes in the layer. And but beyond these biggest holes, there are also smaller ones, and these smaller holes might be difficult to address manually. So here we'll be using a layer which is called frame. It's just a rectangle that includes our area of interest, and we'll be using it to create polygons that would be filling all those small gaps. And so we'll use the difference tool and subtract our layer of else areas from this frame layer. And so we now have this gray area, which is currently a single object. And so we'll have to use the multi-part to single part tool again in order to be able to select separately the different features that are part of it. And so we can select them here in yellow, and we'll delete the ones that is outside of our area of interest in order to keep only the polygons created for the smallest gaps that were inside of the area of interest. We have saved the changes, and so now we can see a layer that contains exclusively all the small gaps in brown that were gaps in our merged layer. And we'll now merge this layer of gaps with the layer of else areas. And so we'll have one single layer with all those polygons together, the ones filling the gaps and the actual else areas. And so we can select them separately if we want. And we are now going to do a similar process as we did before. So in this layer, we already have an area field, and we are going to recalculate it. So we are going to update its content because we have added new objects in this layer. And once this is updated, we can sort them by size, and we'll again select all the polygons that are under 20 square kilometers in size. So we'll do a simple query to select by expression all the areas that are smaller than 20 square kilometers. And once they are selected, we can use again this tool to eliminate the selected polygons. And this time we'll eliminate them by merging them with the neighbor with whom they share the longest common boundary. So this is done, and we can now check closer. So along the river, we can see earlier we had all those smallest polygons, and now they are actually clean, and they have been attached to one or the other of their neighbors. And we'll now save the layer in order to be able to reuse it or share it. So this was a demo to the mic to Gildas to proceed.
Okay, and here comes the demo part. As you can see here, we have two layers, one for department and one for national boundary. I can zoom in so you can see if they are very well aligned or not. You can see that it's not the case. Okay, you can check the distance of this gap, how long is the gap. Up to 10 kilometers, this is a good value. I mean, you can use this value later. So now let's select the tool, snap geometry to layers, and first I select my department and then the national boundaries, and here I will set the value of tolerance that has to be higher than the distance I just measured before. I'll just put 20 kilometers now, so I'm sure that is way above that value of tolerance, this or that tolerance, sorry, that distance. And then I'll choose the appropriate option among those 6 or 7 values here. The first one that is very well fitted, and then just run the tool. Have the results very fast, and also it's very accurate. Let's see. So change the symbology so you can have a difference between the others. Okay. Okay, so now let's compare. Right. As you can see, the result is pretty good. I mean, the dashed lines are the older one, and then the orange that is pretty well snaps to the boundaries. Of course, there are still some small gaps, but that can be fixed rather automatically or manually. First, you can use this automatic method. Check the geometry tool. Just select your layer, and then first you have the geometry validity parts that allow you to fix more of topology, inner topology errors that may happen in the layer itself. And then later lower you have this topology check. It's here, and that is to correct topology error between your layer and the other layers of the in the layout. So here we just select that one, polygons must follow boundary of layer, and then I select the national boundary. And yes, so also yes, you need to fix the value of tolerance. This one is good for me, and then give a name after selecting the folder. Here I just randomly change. Okay, run the tool. It's pretty fast, and then you have your result, which is here up to 400 errors. There's a way to fix those errors automatically by using this option, error resolution setting. You can select your options and then you can run it. It will correct what is possible, but it won't be as good as when you do it manually. So you can first try to export this. Yeah, let me just see. Okay, I think I will just create a new folder. So yeah, I think okay, here let's create a new folder. And just save the file there. Okay, well, once you run it, it may take a while depending on the number of features that has to be created, and of course the features in your layers also. It may pretty long, depends. Okay, here is the results. You can see it has created centroids that comes with attribute information where the type of error is described. You can see here it says contact error, polygon that does not follow the boundary here, and also self-intersection polygon that's wow. Self-intersection polygon, that's the third type of error that we have selected before. So we have those 400 mistakes here. As I showed you, there was a way to correct them automatically, but also we can correct them manually. It can be pretty long, sorry, but it can also be pretty fast depending on the type of shapefile you are working with. Here, I'll just work with this polygon to show. First, select the snapping options. that's more appropriate according to your file, and then the snapping tolerance value. Here I just choose 1 kilometer, and then I select the polygon and select the tool for node and vertex. I just drag the first vertex up to the boundary and then drag the second one, and I'll remove everything that is in between because it is very straight line, so just 2 or 3 vertices can do the work. I just do the same here, drag this first one to the line and then remove everything that is in between. It's pretty easy. Just select them and remove them. And here we are. And for the last part, there we go. Just select everything, remove them, this one too, and this one. And okay, I think we are set. And now you can see if I zoom in, we don't see any difference again at this level of zoom. You see, very good. So here it is, and then you have your result. The polygon is very well aligned now. Thank you very much. The key messages of this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Gilles. Thank you very much, Gilles. So just very briefly, in order to not to take too much time, a few key takeaways. I think it's become clear now that unclean GIS data can have significant consequences on the results of your analyses, on the quality of your monitoring evaluation, and on planning. We only presented a sample of solutions and of issues here. Quite importantly, as always, is avoid errors at the source as much as possible. A few other points that have come out as being very important to us in our daily work is to integrate health checks into the normal work processes. So not just assume that data is okay. At the different stages of your work, always check whether data is in a good state. And if you do see errors, correct them as early as possible in the process. Otherwise, they will propagate throughout your analyses and possibly even multiply. Finally, we now see that more and more on the central level in administrations, people become aware of the usefulness and the importance of GIS analysis and of clean GIS data. But often this does not trickle down to the field agents that actually have to collect some of that data. Often they are so far away from the analyses that they don't really understand the importance of it, and so they don't take as much care. So I think it's quite important to integrate the importance of GIS data and the uses of GIS data and the usefulness of GIS data into the training of the field agents, not only show them which button they have to click to get a point coordinates, but also make them understand why those are important. What we also showed, I think, during this webinar is that you have free and open source software solutions at your disposal to analyze, but also to solve many of the issues you can face. And they are just as good as proprietary solutions, and there's many different ones. We showed QGIS, but you have different ones at your disposal. So we really invite you to just use those and work with that. So this closes our webinar. We have just a few minutes left for questions. So please don't hesitate to ask what is on your mind. Hesitate, some of you have. Thank you. Otherwise, I remind that the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel as soon as possible. We also hope that you will take just the 2 minutes it takes to fill out the survey form that will allow us to improve future webinars. And also, if you have any specific questions, domain-specific questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We are more than happy to respond to those questions also after the webinar if that is better for you. I don't know if there's any questions coming up. Valentina, do you have questions that came maybe before the webinar or through some people? Oh, I see there's one coming up.
Yeah, as well, I saw something coming up. So I see, can we get access of video used for this webinar? Yes, indeed. So the video will be available on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, the question here is not the video of the webinar, but is the specific 3 demo videos, I think, that were shown. We have to think about how we process that, but we will think about the solution there and we'll inform you about that. But yes, you can get access to those videos, but the sound obviously was live, so you will only have the videos without the sound. Or we can cut into our webinar videos and just have those there.
Yes. Moritz, there are still 2 minutes left, so I don't know if I received one or two questions before the webinar started, so I could ask one of those. So someone asked, how can geospatial data contribute to the updating of population data?
That's obviously a big field. That is a very active field right now. There are many different ways of trying to update or to model population data. Point in case would be WorldPop, which is the small population data extract I showed earlier, but many different efforts exist. So this is where satellite data comes in, but also a lot of GIS data that actually flows into the modeling there. The other part that we are working on quite a lot is to work with, for example, ministries of health or of education or whatever, that actually do field work and that collect data there. And so we actually have, for example, when you look at malaria BidNet campaigns, there's more or less a complete census of the population, which is being done before a campaign to decide where to distribute how many BidNets. And so what we're trying to do is to teach people on the field or in the ministries that they can actually collect geospatial data through that with population data. And by having, for example, geolocalized households and household numbers, we can then have much better population data available. Okay. And I see maybe a last question from Derek here. Is it possible to some data science algorithms to do this automatically? Yes, there are some attempts to automatize more and more of these processes. I mean, as Gilles already said, for example, some of the processes actually do already, a lot of the software already provides some automatic solutions. The big danger with automatic solutions, and this is something that Vincent, I think, raised earlier as well, is that obviously you're never sure that the automatic solution will give you the correct answer at the end. So it's something you have to be very careful about. But yes, there are more and more, also more and more, let's say, neural network approaches, or what is generally called artificial intelligence approaches to correcting data as well. And so yes, you can build these kind of tools, but I would say that for a lot of the very basic tools that are available in normal GIS desktop software are sufficient to do a lot of the work, and that then the last step sometimes actually it's better to do it manually to make sure that you have a result that corresponds to what you need.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you very much to all the participants. I wish you a good afternoon or a good day.
Thank you, everyone.